Because of my work on YouTube, I'm in this interesting position where I have a direct line of communication with a lot of makers, and when I live close enough to them, I can even just drive there to do interesting experiments like the one documented here. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Hi, welcome to this video and welcome to the video room of Joranalogue Audio Design headquarters in Flanders, Belgium. A few days ago, me and Frits, we built a modular vocoder. You can see this beast behind me. And I had been thinking about this for months, but I finally got the courage a few weeks ago to ask Joran if he would allow us to build one. And of course he said yes. So me and Frits, we built one, and well, we got it up and running. Now as a vocoder, it's really bare bones. It's a proof of concept, but as a proof of concept, it really works. We were able to run some drum loops from Fritz's phone through the vocoder, which I will show you some footage of now. Now, to use the vocoder with a voice, because, well, if you're not familiar with a vocoder, you usually use this with a microphone connected to it and a synth. But the voice part of the equation wasn't really working out, but this is mostly to do with external processing of the vocal sound before it hits the vocoder. We needed some dynamic control, which we weren't able to address immediately. But before I talk a little bit about the workarounds for that and how I solved it, let me show you this machine here behind me a little more up close. And let me also explain to you how a vocoder actually works, because once you strip it down to its bare guts, so to speak, it's really not that confusing. It's really not that hard. You just need a lot of modules to build one yourself. So this is the vocoder we built. A vocoder always has two parts or layers to it. There's the modulator and there's the carrier. In most instances, when you think of a vocoder, you will think of the modulator being a voice, and the carrier being something like a synthesizer or maybe even a guitar. To make the vocoder work, you split up the modulator signal, for example a voice, into separate bands, spectral bands, and we do the same thing for the carrier. So for example, the voice is going through 8 filters here, set to different frequencies, and the synthesizer in our virtual patch is our carrier and is also split into these 5 same spectral bands. What the vocoder does is it analyzes the amplitude of every single band of the voice, and it extracts envelopes from those amplitudes. It uses those envelopes to open and close VCAs for the bands of the carrier. Thus the vocoder inflicts the spectral quality of the modulator onto the carrier. So to reiterate what I just said, a signal is analyzed in its different spectral bands using bandpass filters. Now usually these are fine-tuned to each other, but we are just using 5 filter 8s. The lowest is set to a low pass filter, so it takes everything below a certain frequency. The highest is set to a high pass, so it takes everything above a certain frequency, and the other three I just set to their own frequencies. We're using the bandpass outputs. The amplitudes of these are analyzed by contour ones, so one for every filter. So this is a bank of filters or a filter bank. So this is probably a contour one bank. The envelopes that contour one extracts from these amplitudes, so contour one acts as an envelope follower in this case. The envelopes that are generated by contour one are then used to open VCAs to which the different filters that are filtering our carrier are patched. So for example, I could sing a low note and only maybe the two first bands would react because there's only a low sound here. This means that only these envelope followers will generate an envelope, which means that only the sound going through these two bottom filters here will be opened, will be let through the VCA. Same goes for high frequencies. If I produce a heavy sibilant S, probably only the two upper filters will react. There will only be sound going through those because these are set to high frequencies. The other ones are set to low frequencies. This means that only the two right contour ones will generate an envelope. This also means that only the sound of our carrier that's going through these two right filter 8s here will be let through the VCAs. Now that's in theory how a vocoder works. You can send drums through it as I demonstrated before. You can actually send anything through it. But I've connected a mic to this, and let's just see how this sounds with this very crude vocoder. To make speech illegible, you at least need 8 filters, and well, preferably even more. But of course that means doubling up the amount of filters because you also need a similar filter bank for your carrier. In this case we were only able to find 10 filter 8s, so we had to do with a 5-band vocoder. So let me now talk a little bit through the microphone so you can hear how that sounds. Voice here, but let's turn this. The issues that we encountered when we first started testing this proof of concept vocoder here were that the dynamics of the voice are, well, just a little bit too much. These types of microphones really let through all the dynamics, and there's too much of a difference between the silent notes in the silent sounds in a voice, in a speech pattern, and the loud sounds. And this caused everything to clip or not sound at all at other times. So I fixed this by patching up a limiter module in between my microphone and well, everything else in this patch, just so the dynamic range of the voice was a little bit more narrow before it hits the filters here. On top of that, I already mentioned it, for speech to be illegible you need more filters. You need at least 8 and probably 12 or 16 would be much better. Another thing we already knew from the start is that, well, we're just using bandpass outputs for the most part here of filter 8, and these filters are not tuned together, so you have nice crossovers. We just haphazardly set these two frequencies that sounded right. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this short overview of this modular vocoder here, built solely from Joranalogue Audio Design modules. Let me now play you a few patches that I made using this vocoder. which seemed to burn within the creature's barbed skull. Large red eyes turned my way, and I found myself hypnotized by the dance of light within the multifaceted prisms there. Not merely reflected light, but a fierce, blood-bright glow, which seemed to burn within the creature's barbed skull. Large red eyes turned my way, and I found myself hypnotized by the dance of light within the multifaceted prisms there. Not merely reflected light, but a fierce, blood-bright glow, which seemed to burn within the creature's barbed skull. Large red eyes turned my way, and I found myself hypnotized by the dance of light within the multifaceted prisms there. Not merely reflected light, but a fierce, blood-bright glow, which seemed to burn within the creature's barbed skull. that's going to it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Many thanks to Joran for inviting me over to his space, and thanks to Frits for helping me out building this vocoder behind me. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something in this video, and I'm sure I will see you next time. Bye.